Hi everyone, sorry I'm late. I was having huge technical difficulties with my laptop not recognizing my camera, which is a problem. Can anyone hear me? I'm not sure I don't know if the microphone's on. So hopefully, hey Jane, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, good. All right, so now I'm going, because last time I did a whole Facebook Live and no one can hear me, and that was lame. So here we go. I'm going to share it to my personal page. Hold on, join me for my Facebook Live review. I always have to sing that part because that's what I do. All right, so quick intro. My name is Virginia Dwan, and I blog and write at Mandarin Mama, mandarinmama.com. And I have written a book called So You Want Your Kids to Learn Chinese. And so this is kind of a new thing for me to do live reviews. We'll see how it works, see if people like it, see if I totally bomb or not. And hopefully it will be useful. So I have 4 questions. I will try to get through them as quickly, but also as thoroughly as possible. Sorry, I totally didn't mean to flip you off there. I was just straightening my glasses. And yeah, so I'm not a concise person, so I will hopefully get through the 4 questions. All right, so the first one is from Julie Cash King. Quick background, she has an 11-year-old daughter who was enrolled for 2 years in a Mandarin immersion school, and now she has been homeschooling, and she had a weekly tutor in Chinese for 2 years. And the tutor has just moved, and so she doesn't quite know what to do with her daughter and how to support her learning. She's open to about 1 to 3 hours of instruction and another 3 to 5 hours for like other activities and stuff. And I'm assuming it's per week and not per day, because God bless you if that's per day. And I think some concerns were monetary resources as well as finding a tutor. So her main question is, she's not quite sure what level her daughter is, and then also how to support her daughter in learning Chinese. And her daughter is the one who really wants to learn Chinese. And so because she's a good mom and wants to support her daughter's dreams, here she is. Okay, so Julie, first of all, that's awesome that your daughter has been willing to be in Chinese class on a weekly basis for 2 years, on top of being in a Mandarin immersion school. The easiest thing I would say for you to do is to find another tutor. I know, like, you didn't need really me to tell you that, but yes, find another tutor as soon as possible. And it's okay if they're not the best tutor at the beginning. You can look for another tutor while you're working with maybe a tutor that is not more to your liking. But in the meantime, besides finding a tutor, I would say that if you're not sure about the assessment, like what level your daughter is, the easiest thing to do is when you find the tutor, have the tutor assess them. That takes almost no effort on your part, like almost no additional effort on your part other than to find that tutor, say, hey, you're not really sure what the levels of your kid's Chinese is. You think it's at this, but hey, what do you know, right? And then have the tutor see what your daughter's level is at, and then kind of how much, and if it's accurate, and then also to tell her what your goal for your daughter is to be, or what your daughter's goal is to be, and then kind of map out the next 3 months. I want to say quarterly results, like quarterly goals, because that's less of a long tail, right? Like you can see results somewhat like quickly, right? But like, and to see if it's working. The other thing is, if you don't have a tutor and you still want, or you really want her to be assessed, there are a lot of different assessment tests out there to see what your daughter's Chinese level is. And I'll drop a link in the comments after this live, but I think it's mandarinmama.com/ or actually, I don't know the exact link off of it, but I think it was called How to Gauge Chinese Fluency, and it lists um, several assessment tests that your daughter can take. Some of them might be, you might have to ask to see if she can test, to see if your Mandarin immersion school will allow her to test and take that assessment, even if she's not an attending student. Alternatively, you could go to a local Chinese school and ask them if they have an assessment test and have them give it to your daughter, and then you'll know. As for what to do and how to support her, I wasn't quite clear on whether you what particularly wanted support on. From my gathering of your context, you probably also want support in not just only speaking, but also reading, because you mentioned something like characters and other activities. So there are the cheapest way is to go look on YouTube. YouTube has lots of videos on how to teach your kids Chinese. Not just kids, but adults too. You might have to screen it if it's more geared towards adults, but there's lots of programs that are for free. I've never looked them up personally, but I know they exist. And on top of that, there's cartoons on YouTube that are in Chinese. All you have to do is type whatever cartoon you're looking for and then type Mandarin or Chinese or something, and you'll find them. So if you're okay with the less than fully legal route for these programs, you can do that. On top of that, I would listen to, have access to as many Chinese CDs, DVDs, as much media as you can for your daughter, just to get the rhythm of the language into her head and to expose her to greater vocabulary and just more of the language on top of the weekly tutoring. And hopefully the weekly tutoring will be a little bit longer than an hour, because an hour is not too much time. And then if you want to supplement her reading and writing, there's actually 2 programs that I know of, and I'm sure there's even more. But you can try littlechinesereader.com. I think she's offering 1 free year for you to check out, which is actually really, really generous. And then I think there's also dailynoodles.com, and I'll drop the links in the comments at the end. But they are like, I think that's called Raz Kids or Raspberry Kids or something like that. So it's kind of building up reading for your children. And it will help like graded readers, and they have activities and like badges you can earn. I've only checked out Daily Noodles a long, long time ago, and I just signed up for Little Chinese Readers, Little Chinese Reader, no S, and I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So that might also be helpful. If you're willing to drop some cash, there's always Sage Books, who I just adore and love and think is like the best ever. But then there's also like Greenfield curriculum, and so those cost more than the Little Chinese Reader and Daily Noodles, but they are like a curriculum kind of thing. What else could you do? I mean, that's really, it's oh yes, there's Rosetta Stone. I think that's more geared towards grown-ups, but your daughter's 11, so she's probably capable of doing that and going through those programs without too much difficulty. And then I think there's other books like Better Learning Chinese. Oh gosh, but if there are different types of Chinese learning curriculum geared towards the Chinese as a second language learner audience, so you can try those too. So hopefully that kind of helps. I mean, I don't think I told you anything you didn't already know, which is the number one thing you can do for her is probably hire a tutor, either a local this is another thing. You could hire a mommy's helper. So maybe instead of like an outright Chinese tutor, you can hire a local Chinese, maybe college student or high school student, to just hang out and play with your kid. Have them chat and talk with your daughter, and that's actually probably even more useful than the tutor if you don't care about as much about like reading and writing, because conversation is really, you can only get that from practice. Alternatively, you can beg your previous tutor to see if she's willing to like Skype with your daughter. And yeah, so hopefully that helps. And if not, let me know, and then I will, give me some additional information, and I will try and follow up with you. All right, second question is from Jane. Actually, I don't actually know how to say her last name. Jane Chang? Okay. I apologize. All right, so her question is, what does my read Chinese books daily look like in practice? Does each kid read one book? Do I choose the book? Do I limit their choices? Do I choose what length it is? How do I ensure my kid is actually reading and not skimming and looking at pictures? Is there a difference from the 4-year-old and the 6-year-old and the 8-year-old? Okay. So short answer is I do nothing. I tell them that this is what they have to do today, and they do it. Or they don't, and then they get in trouble or whatever. So that's not really helpful at all, is it? But basically, I ask my children every weekday to read 2 Chinese books. I don't care about length. I don't care if, I don't care what type of book they choose. I don't care whether it's if it's a book that they've read before. I don't care if it's a book that they've read many, 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 many times. I don't care. I don't have really many limitations on my children. I just want them to be reading Chinese. So that's that's my short answer. But in terms of like, I just want them reading. I want the books to be in their hands and them reading. If they're skimming, that's fine. I mean, that sucks, but some days they don't want to read. And then, yeah, and so I do treat them differently though, because they are different ages. So my oldest, Cookie Monster, he just turned 8, and he's usually pretty good about reading 2 books. Now he's gotten tricky, he's gotten sneaky, and so he tends to choose the easy books, right? Because it's easy for him to read. He'll be done in like 5 minutes, and then he's done, and yay! So we've been working on chapter books, and it was really, really, really hard to get him started on chapter books, because he was really intimidated. He's just like, there's too much F in Chinese. Okay, I mean, he didn't say that, but that's what he meant. So what we did, so what I do now with him on the big chapter books, and that was I had him read them aloud to me, out loud to me, and I don't. Maybe he reads like 10 pages a day. 10 to 15 pages a day, and we'll call it a day. Or sometimes if I'm feeling really ambitious or mean or like I actually can follow through with something, then I'll make him read a chapter. And then so the more we did that, the more he felt comfortable in reading it. So now he'll choose some of the easier chapter books, like the funnier ones, or the ones that have bigger words, like bigger fonts. Yeah, so that helped. Prior to getting to this point of reading chapter books, I had us read. I think I've done a review about it. It's like a daily reading workbook, and so it's like a brief 2 or 3, maybe it's like 100 words or something like that, excerpt that it's like at grade level. So like I think I have a 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade one, and I've only done the 1st grade one. And so it's like a reading comprehension. They read the like short story or excerpt, and then they have to answer questions, and they're multiple guess questions. So they ask you, oh, what was the main character talking about? What type of house was he living in, or what was he really worried about, or so like plot points, and then there's like some moral, and there was other more complicated stuff, but I skipped it because I'm lazy. And I didn't understand it well enough to ask my kid, and B, which is sad, right? It's super sad. And then B, he did not enjoy them. So that's what I did to kind of build him up to that point. With my 6-year-old daughter, I never did that because, again, laziness, and also because she doesn't really need that as much, I think. So she is really against reading right now. She's super against it. So I am just happy when she chooses a book and reads it. I don't care if she's read the book a million times. In fact, I'm okay with that. And then And sometimes I let her get away with 1 book, and sometimes I let her get away with 0. So I'm a lot harder on the 8-year-old than I am on the 6-year-old, which isn't fair, but it is kind of fair, right? Because she's younger. And when Cookie Monster was Gamera's age, I didn't make him do any of these things. So technically, she's ahead. And with my 4-year-old, this was before we had the pneumonia outbreak, and but I would try to read several picture books with him at least once a day or so. It was easier when we were at like Kung Fu or waiting for his siblings at a class, and then I would just bring books and read there. So hopefully that helps. Like I said, I try not to put too many pressures on it. It also helps that I have 0 English books. Or I do have English books, but my kids can't read them yet because I have not taught my children how to read English yet. So that does help. So I have found that when they're bored, they'll pick up a Chinese picture book and page through it. And I actually don't care if they're not reading it and just looking at the pictures. I just want them to get used to looking at the language and knowing that that's their option, Chinese books. So if your kids can read English and you're okay with hiding all the English books, that if when they're bored, they'll choose a Chinese book, you should do that. They also started reading more when I cut screen time. Go figure, right? They're bored. Otherwise, they would just stay on the screen, and when they're not on the screen, then they want to play. But now they have so much more time without the screen that they are actually bored of playing with all their toys or with each other or drawing or whatever. I mean, they're bored. I mean, I would just nap, but that's an 8-year-old for you. And so my 8-year-old son has actually been so bored that he instead decided to read and do homework. I wish all my children were that awesome. But, I mean, it's because he's the oldest child, and the oldest children are the most awesome. Not that I'm biased or anything, because I'm the oldest child, and I am that awesome. All right. Hope that answers your question, Jane. If not, let me know. The third question is from Ting Teo Henderson. Quick background. She is the only Mandarin-speaking person in their family, or the only Mandarin person-speaking parent. She has a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and she only recently started, I think last month, speaking Chinese to them on a daily basis, which I think is pretty amazing. And so she wants her 5-year-old daughter to be a lot more confident when speaking Chinese and asking and answering questions in Chinese, as well as and eventually expressing ideas easily in Chinese. And her question is, how can she up her daughter's vocabulary? And I'm presuming her 5-year-old, because there's lots of things that she doesn't cover in her daily life, right? Like there's only so many things you can talk about after school or that you encounter. So then, of course, her daughter will have gaps in vocabulary. And so she asked if she should do flashcards or something. So first of all, how awesome are you to decide to do Mandarin, and then boom, after 5 years of not speaking Mandarin on a daily basis, now you are. I mean, that's awesome. Okay, because that's really hard. So good job. And then second of all is really yes, you're totally right. You need to up her vocabulary, and there's several ways to do that. One is just by reading a lot to her. You mentioned, I didn't mention it as I recapped, but you did mention in when you were giving me some background that you do read to her. And I would say continue that. Read as much as possible to her, because story, and then explain things, because stories will bring up all sorts of situations and different vocabulary. And then if your 3-year-old's there, that's bonus, right? That's 2 for the price of 1. So I would read as much as possible to her. I would, hey, Auntie Bren, thanks for joining. So yes, I would read as much as possible to her. I would either buy or download as many audiobooks in Chinese as possible. Any moment in the car, any of those, I call them interstitial moments. So like the moment, like the times you're waiting, right? Like you're at the doctor waiting, you're driving, like it's between a class or between something. It's just the like in between moments. Cram it with as much Chinese stuff as possible. Okay, so audiobooks, songs, you know, just as much Chinese in her brain as possible. And then the second thing then is to yes, what you're doing, like flashcards. You could do like unit studies or just like unit studies is the wrong term, I think, but like, you know, maybe every week say, okay, this is the stuff we're going to learn. This is the topic we're going to like focus on increasing your vocabulary in. So you can check out sites like Chalk Academy. I'm pretty sure it's .com. chalkacademy.com. handsonchinesefun.wordpress.com. There's also Guavarama. She also has a lot of stuff. And then Fortune Cookie Mom. Now, Fortune Cookie Mom has packets of vocabulary. So like she has a body parts vocab packet, and that I'll be reviewing, I think, tomorrow. And but she also has like different holidays and seasons. So you could do something very focused like that. Chalk Academy has a lot of great, Chalk Academy, I think, and also Hands-On Chinese. They have a lot of great crafts. They teach colors, you know, they teach a little, I think they're geared for a little bit younger than 5. However, if you've only just started speaking daily Mandarin, then I think it'd be, you know, maybe a good fit. So there's lots of activities and crafts. And then if you don't care about the writing part and just the reading, I mean, those are good ways to go. Guavarama is great because then you can see on her site, she also homeschools bilingually, so she covers topics like history, beginning of time series from like Montessori, like I remember she did something all about like planets or the different stages of is it elements? Not elements, but like the gas phase, liquid phase, solid. Thank you, Virginia. I went to college. I majored in microbiology, and I'm like, oh, what's a solid and gas? All right. So Guavarama's site is really good for older children because she has actually in-depth, she does in-depth things for you, right? Like that was so unspecific, but yeah, but she'll have unit studies or like a lesson plan for you, and she'll even, you know, lay out the vocab that you can work on. Like she'll lay out the vocab, she'll give you pictures, she'll give you books of where you can find the information and like websites, and she links to videos. So depending on the level your daughter is at, these sites might vary in appropriateness. Okay, but in general, provide her with a vocabulary, and fun ways are probably more fun. And yeah, fun way. I'm really so like coherent today. I'm sorry. So yeah, just you can do flashcards, you can do cartoons, you can do YouTube. So but a lot of the stuff that I actually said for Julie also applies in your situation, because really what you want to do is up exposure and up vocabulary, right? And for stuff that you don't normally talk about. So books are also great. I mean, nothing improved my Chinese vocabulary for trucks like having a book about trucks. So now I know and actually still remember many, many, many truck names that I will never ever use again. All right, so keep reading stories to her, keep reading as many books to her, check out the sites, and I'll drop them in the comments also. And yeah. It's all about the CLE, the Chinese language ecosystem. So and then she'll naturally pick it up. I mean, you've only been at it for a month, so there's really not, I mean, a month is not actually that much time if you take out sleeping, that's like a third of it, right? And then school, which is probably another quarter of it. So that's way too much math for me to do in my head, but you know, it leaves you very little time, right? So don't be so hard on yourself. And yeah, I hope that helps. If not, again, let me know in the comments. I can continue. All right, the last one is from Melissa Chang. And her background is she has read that Maria Montessori principles are like following where the child leads. Like you follow the child's interest. So if they're not into doing like spelling today, then you don't do spelling. You do what they want to. If all they want to do is paint, then they paint. And her question is how to balance that. Is that even possible when you are trying to teach your children Chinese in a non-Chinese dominant environment? Okay, so I mean, I'm sure it works just fine in like Taiwan or China, but it might not work as well in an English dominant speaking country because, let's face it, no kid is going to be like, yeah, I want to learn Chinese and I want to learn Chinese characters. I want to learn hard things. Like very few children are going to be like, yes, that's what I want to do. They're going to be like, I want to play with bubbles and like Play-Doh and destroy your house and stuff. All right, not that I have personal experience with my children destroying my house, but I do. I have lots. They destroy themselves, their bodies, and my house. I can't have nice things, everyone. Okay, so, oh yes, the rest of our question is like, how much do you balance? How much do you push? How many days of non-Chinese reading would you tolerate? And her big goal is she wants her kids to be functionally literate by the end of high school. Okay, so full confession, I have gone lots and lots of weeks of not reading or having my children read to me in Chinese. I've gone many weeks. And there were setbacks, as can be expected. And I was mad because I'm unreasonable. So just like I cannot remember a character I just looked up this morning, my children are not going to remember things if I skip lots of days in weeks and months between readings. So my answer to you then is, how much backsliding can you tolerate? Okay, so yeah, like if you're like me and it pisses you off a lot and then you end up yelling at your kids, then don't backslide. Don't tolerate days. Like maybe max 2 days between not reading Chinese. If you're like more a go with the flow type of person, you know, do whatever you want, right? I sense that you're not quite that laid back. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as like a good job, because I'm totally anal retentive. So I think it is best to read as much as possible with your kids, even if they don't feel like it. And that is probably totally against Maria Montessori principles. And again, I want to plug Guava Rama again, because she does Montessori, and her children, I think, are 10 and, not 10, maybe 9? No, 10 and 7. And so she found, if I remember correctly, that she had to adapt Maria Montessori's principles to her kids while she was homeschooling them in regards to Chinese, because again, it takes a lot of intentionality on both the children and the parents' part, and the children probably do not have that innate sense of, yeah, I need to learn this crap. So the parent has to sub for that. So I don't think they meld together well in that sense. Now, when they are older, and they might be more self-directed at that time, and they might read more in Chinese on their own because they enjoy it. But until then, it's hard to like things until you get good at it, right? I mean, it's the case whether you're playing piano. I mean, if you're just learning how to play piano, I mean, it sucks. Like, you're playing like 2-note songs over and over again, and you're learning the basics. I mean, the beginning books suck, but you can't get to like playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Is it Beethoven? I think it's Beethoven. Or is it, well, whoever's Moonlight Sonata, right? Like, you can't get to playing that if you didn't suffer through all the like crappy, boring parts at the beginning. So same thing with reading, right? Especially in Chinese, because it's not a phonetic language. So it's a straight on memorization, or you have pinyin or zhuyin on the side, right? Like to help supplement your kids' Chinese reading. So, so like, you know, it it's not going to be self-directed, and like they're not going to be like excited about reading Chinese until they get to a level where the books are exciting and interesting. So along with that, then you have to either have access to a lot of books in terms of like the local Chinese local libraries, or you have to own a lot of books, or know friends who own a lot of books. So that way that you have a lot of choices. And so yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm telling you anything you don't already know, but it ultimately comes down to how much are you willing to tolerate backsliding. So it's because if there's not daily practice, it's really hard. I mean, I even noticed it with my oldest child, and he can read about probably 1,400 characters. I'm not really sure. I don't really measure, but my Chinese tutor for him says he's on par with second graders in China, and he's in second grade now. So he can actually read a lot of things. I'm actually pretty surprised. So yay, money well spent. And even and he can read zhuyin. So most of the books that we have zhuyin. Even if we skip like I'm a little more comfortable with him skipping days, but his reading level will backslide, and he'll start stumbling over words and stuff because we took a break. So when we went back to Taiwan, I didn't make them read every day because first of all, I did not want to bring books to Taiwan because I was going to bring books back from Taiwan. Second of all, I did not want to deal with reading with my kid every day when we were in Taiwan because we're already in Taiwan. There's tons of Chinese. I'm Chinesed out. They just want to zone out. So I did not do that. And yet I was still surprised when we came back from Taiwan and finally started reading again. And he like forgot. He had a hard time like blending. He had a hard time doing a lot of stuff, and I was really pissed off at him. Like I was really mean. Well, no one's surprised that I'm mean, but you know, I still feel bad. And I was really hard on him, and he felt bad, and he was crying, and he felt really crappy. And that's really the way to help your children read. It's to make them feel bad. I'm kidding. That's not true. So it took a few days, a few weeks before he got back to where he was. And he was really discouraged, and he was really upset. So don't go that long if you can help it. And even, so I usually let him maybe go 2 or 3 days. And same with my daughter. But this past winter break, we took a long break because I'm lazy. And pneumonia. So yeah, so hopefully that helps. It is obviously better if you read every day, but that's not possible. And I actually just do every weekday. If your kid starts getting really not wanting to read the books, I have found that it is possibly because they're bored. So for a long time, I was pushing Cookie Monster to go through this series. It's the 小书包 series. And because I liked them and it was easy to track, but he was getting like, no, I don't want to read these. He was like, he didn't like it. So I skipped to some of like the Little Bear, maybe not the Little Bear, I think you read that last year, but like the Frog and Toad books. And so then, that was more interesting. So then he started reading those, and then he started reading, I think, the Pigeon books and like all sorts of the like books more appropriate for kids his age, a little bit older. And so then now, because when he's lazy, remember, I make my kids read 2 Chinese books a day, and he doesn't want to read a harder Chinese chapter book, he will go to that series that he originally didn't want to read, and he'll read that because it's easier. So, you know, there's benefits to having requirements. So hopefully that helped. And if anyone has any other questions, I will try to do these on a weekly basis if I have enough questions, and if not, whenever I get enough questions, I guess. Or if there's a dearth of responses, then I'll know that people actually don't find this interesting, and I will not do it anymore. So I hope that helps. Again, thanks again for joining me. And I hope that was helpful. And I will see you next week.